Well, from wherever you're watching us in Nairobi, Kenya, and around the world, good evening. You are in time for KBC Prime Edition, coming to you live from Broadcasting House right here in the capital city of Nairobi, Kenya. Good evening once again. My name is Mboya. Tonight we've lined up lots of stories for you in business and also in sports. Plus, live in studio, we have our guest, President of the Population Media Center, William Ryerson. Remember, the World Population Day is just around the corner. A couple of days, we're going to talk about what to expect on that day. And also, live tonight on the scorecard, Kenya's public wage bill is the topic of discussion tonight. Kenya's public wage bill conundrum, that's the topic of a conversation tonight. O'Brien Kimani, my colleague, hosting a fully constituted panel. You don't want to miss that. But here's the deal. First things first, top in this live broadcast.
We are going to have a prosecution by our local judicial institutions of international crimes.
We have built a watertight case against Pastor Mackenzie. A hint at the charges awaiting Shakahola prime suspect.
Involvement in the process? I was not involved in the process because already the process had started.
It wasn't me. Sacked Health Permanent Secretary Josephine Buru quizzed over 3.7 billion shillings KEMSA scandal. And a packed order paper. Indeed, it's a full in tray as National Assembly resumes sittings. Well, Brian Muraro is in charge of our sign language docket. Our socials at KBC Channel 1 if you want to speak to us. My Twitter handle at Tomboya24. Remember, live also in studio tonight, we have the privilege of speaking to William Ryerson, the President of Population Media Center. We are going to talk about many issues, including whether the world can sustain a growing population that now stands at 7.7 or slightly over 8 billion. You don't want to miss that. Thank you once again for joining us. Straight to our top story. The government has launched a program to open up access roads within the 800-acre land belonging to the controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie. Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki, who spoke after launching the third phase of the exhumation in Shakahola, said that the land will be subdivided in blocks of 100 acres to enable the operation to be carried out properly. Kindiki also noted that the Shakahola forest will be converted into a national memorial site. That report opens our coverage tonight.
The third phase of the exhumation exercise has officially commenced today, with the Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary Kindiki Kithure, accompanied by security officials including Director of Criminal Investigations Mohammed Amin, officiating it. Even as the exhumation and search for victims of the heinous crimes at the Shakahola forest continue, the Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary noted their determination to prosecute the suspects after charging them with genocide, murder, and crimes against humanity, disclosing that they are working round the clock to gather watertight evidence that will put the perpetrators behind bars.
The government and the prosecution agencies of Kenya cannot afford to lose this case. We must convict, we must prosecute and have convicted Mr. Mackenzie and his collaborators. And for that reason, we are working extremely hard. I want to congratulate the investigators who are working in a multi-agency format in this prosecution-led investigations within the laws of our country to make sure that this case is won.
He reiterated that for the first time in Kenya's history, the judiciary will execute the case under the International Crimes Act.
For the first time in our country, we are going to have a prosecution by our local judicial institutions of international crimes. And therefore, we are giving effect to a number of our laws that have not been tested locally before.
The search inside the forest continues as he officially commissioned the construction of several security roads within the 50,000-acre Chakama Ranch, which will facilitate access into the vast Shakahola forest land.
A decision has been taken to open up security roads within Chakama Ranch so that we can be able to do roads and create compartments so that every 100 acres we are able to do the search and rescue both for victims and for graves in a methodical, systematic, scientific and final manner.
The controversial Pastor Paul Mackenzie and 17 other suspects, including his wife, remain in custody as the main suspects to the deaths of the vast Shakahola forest and will be appearing at the Shanzu Law Courts tomorrow. Meanwhile, at the command center, the Regional County Commissioner Rhoda Onyancha announced that today's exercise saw 9 bodies exhumed, bringing the number of deaths to 251. Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary Kindiki Kithure says he shall not relent until the perpetrators of the Shakahola massacre are brought to book. From Shakahola Forest in Kilifi County, I am Ann Mburu.
Former Public Health Principal Secretary Josephine Buru has distanced herself from the 3.7 billion shillings Kenya Medical Supplies Authority KEMSA scandal that earned her dismissal. Buru, who appeared before the Senate Health Committee, said that the executive orders had reduced their functions from 13 to 7, and she was not in any way tasked with procuring medical equipment under her docket. Here's that report.
Amid confusion on who should be held accountable over the 3.7 billion shillings anti-mosquito net scandal, former Health Principal Secretary Josephine Buru sought to clear her name before the Senate Health Committee over this scandal that saw her sacked barely 6 months into office.
What is the role of the board and the CEO, and what is your role as the PS, which that responsibility falls under?
Involvement in the process, I was not involved in the process because already the process had started.
Mburu absolved herself of any blame, further urging senators to expedite their investigations to unearth the real culprits.
Deep down, I would like to know what is this thing he was told about Josephine did, so that it comes out, so that the Wanjiku can judge me.
According to the former Principal Secretary, who claimed that she did not interfere with the tendering process, the role fell squarely in the docket of her former colleague in the ministry, Engineer Peter Tum, who was recently moved to the Ministry of Sports in the recent reshuffle.
Initially, I was supposed to be the chair when the order was won, but when it was split, the CS Wafula had already written letter to the GF that the chairman of GF is the chairman of KCM, the Kenya Coordinating Mechanism of GF is PS Tum.
The committee also agreed suspended KEMSA CEO Terry Ramadhani and the chair Daniel Rono to ascertain if mistakes in the procurement process were enough to cancel the tender and if the government lost monies in the process.
Are you telling this committee that you were not aware of the technical requirements of the tender when you go through? Were you not given a brief by the management that this is a tender? It was advertised on this particular day, it was open on this particular day.
The brief I got was when I requested offer is that the tender is when I was told a team of evaluation team had been appointed jointly with the ministry to carry out the evaluation of the tender.
No loss of public funds, because there can be no loss if there is no award. You see, Chair, this process was not complete at the point of discussions even with Global Fund, because a procurement process is completed either by awarding or by terminating.
In the month of April, President William Ruto sacked the embattled PS and the entire KEMSA board over the botched medical tender on anti-malaria nets. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u will pronounce the budget highlights before Parliament. That's coming up next week on Thursday. The National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula made the communication as the House resumed plenary sittings after 1 month of recess. Members of Parliament are also expected to consider the budget estimates, the contentious finance bill, as well as appropriations bill during this month.
The National Assembly resumed plenary sittings after 1 month-long recess to a full tray of business. MPs will this month be engaged in considering the reports of House committees that vetted members of Judicial Service Commission, proposed Governor of Central Bank of Kenya, and the Director General, National Intelligence Service.
And pursuant to Section 7, Sub-Article 3B of the National Intelligence Service Act 2022, this House approves the appointment of Mr. Nordin Mohammed Haji, CBS, OGW, as the Director General of the National Intelligence Service.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u will appear in the House next week Thursday to pronounce the budget highlights and revenue-raising measures.
Those who continue to incite Kenyans, those who continue to misinform and disinform Kenyans, even on the questions of the finance bill, will now reconcile themselves with their conscience and come and debate the issues touching on finance bill on the floor of this House.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly has suspended tomorrow's morning sitting to allow members to attend to the National Prayer Breakfast that is organized by Parliament. But as the MPs settled down for the fourth session, few meters away at Jivanji Gardens, police officers disrupted planned demonstrations by a section of civil societies over the contentious finance bill. Police used tear gas to disperse the protesters, who later regrouped at Uhuru Park Freedom Corner. A number of protesters were arrested and detained at Central Police Station. Yusho Kiwashira, Prime Edition.
Now, First Lady Rachel Ruto has emphasized the need for women to take an active role in decision and policy making for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs if you like. The First Lady, who cycled for 10.8 kilometers from State House Nairobi all the way to the United Nations office, noted that cycling was in line with SDG 11 and 13 on efficient means of transportation, as well as climate action of achieving net zero carbon emissions.
1, go! You can start.
Braving the early morning Nairobi chilly weather, First Lady Rachel Ruto, in a full cycling gear, started a 10.8-kilometer bicycle ride from the State House to the United Nations for the second day of the United Nations Habitat Assembly. The First Lady, who launched the Global Alliance of Cities for Road Safety and a Share the Road campaign, emphasized the need for respect and understanding between motorists and cyclists.
Our aim is to raise awareness of the importance of cycling and its contribution towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 3, which advocates for good health and well-being, enhances personal health and offers numerous health benefits, including improving cardiovascular fitness and boosting mental health.
Cycling is a clean and active mode of transportation that offers a more cost-effective, convenient, and accessible means of transportation.
The First Lady, who later presided over the second day of the United Nations Habitat Assembly, emphasized the importance of women taking up the center stage in promoting and the ultimate realization of Sustainable Development Goals.
If women are given the right opportunities and tools, they have the power to uplift themselves and their communities. This is the reason why I advocate for and insist that women must be at the center of shaping cities and communities.
Sentiments echoed by United Nations Executive Director Maimuna Sharif, who noted that with more women taking up leadership roles, actively participating in problem solving could be the ultimate solution to the shaping of communities and cities.
Women, we must be
at the table. This is because if we are not at the table, we will be on the menu.
The UN Habitat, as part of the UN Interagency Task Force, has centered its approach to urban health as well as around chronic diseases, acknowledging that urban areas are going to be where the vast majority of human population are going to be living by in the coming years.
Yes, it's about practical solutions in advancing the realization of Sustainable Development Goals, popularly known as SDGs. Women have been considered to be at the center of this agenda for it to be a reality. Opicho Chemtai for Prime Edition in Gigiri, Nairobi.
Straight into the corridors of justice now, and a Kahawa Law Court has given the prosecution until the 5th of September 2023 to get the results of the DNA samples taken from 12 police officers from the disbanded Special Service Unit. The officers are suspected to be behind the disappearance of 2 Indian nationals and their Kenyan taxi driver on the 22nd of July 2022. And as Ruth Wamboy reports, the anticipated results from the DNA samples will inform the decision on whether to charge or drop the charges by the prosecution on the officers.
Kahawa Loco Tuesday played host to the 13 disbanded Special Service Unit, officers and a civilian. One by one, they entered the dock to wait to a mention before Trial Magistrate Gideon Kiage Oenga.
We have seen that it's important to safeguard and to avoid any conflict of interest.
The state prosecutor told court investigations are at an advanced stage, and the only delay is the DNA results, which are not yet out due to overstretched manpower, owing to the ongoing Shakahola investigations exercise.
I wish to state that indeed what Mr. Cohen has stated is the fact that once the investigations are complete, we may come anytime before the 5th of September.
The court was also urged to take judicial notice of the transition of what is going on at the DPP's office.
Yes. I understand.
The explanations vehemently opposed by the defense lawyer Martina Swiga and the victim's lawyer Cohen Amanda, who argue this could be the tantamount to delayed justice.
The state is a well-fueled machinery, capable of discharging functions and duties as bestowed on them by virtue of being a creature of the Constitution. Therefore, that reason that there are other investigations in Shakahola cannot subject the respondents to the injustice of justice delayed.
So it is in everyone's interest to see justice. And we hope that the DPP will bring a good job. Let there be no witch hunt, let there be what, but at the end of the day, to the victims, as we want to know, where is our 3 family members?
Trial Magistrate Gideon Oenga in his ruling said no prejudice will be done to the suspects in question.
The defense counsels have raised their concern with regard to the prosecution seeking another date. Those concerns are on the record. However, fundamentally, you've also said you are willing to indulge them for one more time.
In January, the officers were released on a 500,000 shillings personal bond and are awaiting processing of charges. The former Special Service Units officers will have to wait a little longer for them to know their fate since their DNA results are not yet out. Ruth Wamboy reporting for Prime Edition from Kahawa Law Courts in the county of Kiambu.
Now, the hurdle of getting a viable donor for organ transplant and coupled rather with the prohibitive costs involved that have been identified as the major challenges that face patients who are in dire need of transplant services. In Kenya, for example, there is no organ bank and patients solely rely on blood relatives who are alive. Now, with the shrinking family settings, getting a donor is proving to be a challenge. Experts are now calling on people to develop a culture of organ donation. Why? So as to fill that gap. Here's that report.
John Gikonyo counts himself lucky after a successful kidney transplant 8 years ago, an organ donated to him by his sister. He was diagnosed with a kidney disease in the year 2009 and had his transplant in 2015. Luckily, by the time of diagnosis, his condition has not reached kidney failure. He was forced to explore several avenues of treatment prior to the transplant, which he says was financially constraining.
The other challenge is finances for getting a transplant, and the other challenge is post-transplant care, the care after transplant, because you need to take medication for life to suppress your immunity so that you protect the new organ, which your body will recognize as a foreign body. You need regular clinics, at least every 3 months, and the clinics require laboratory tests, and all these are expensive and they come at a cost that a lot of people find it's too much for them.
As Kenya joins the world in commemorating the World Transplant Day under the theme Hope for Tomorrow, transforming lives through organ donations, stakeholders in the medical field who convened at Kenyatta National Hospital to mark the day urged Kenyans to embrace organ donation to save lives. The medical experts noted that the Ministry of Health and the government have taken steps to ensure that such services are readily available when needed.
It's not only the preventive and the basic services that we are looking at the specialized care that Kenyans will need. And when they need, it should be available to them. And we are looking at the costs, the affordability, the quality and availability. So access has those three components.
Improved infrastructure, training of more human resource, formulation of policies, procedures and regulations are among the key issues that, if prioritized, will turn around the health sector.
We want to protect the donor, we want to protect the recipients, so that we have enough organs and tissues to all the patients who need these organs and tissues, because this will help us to expand the space so that organ transplant becomes accessible.
The issue of access, the issue of quality and the issue of cost are very key. Now, when it comes to costing, we still find that many Kenyans still cannot afford to get transplantation, but this is because many of them will have to, there are conflicting interests, financial interest.
The World Transplant Day is marked every 6th of June, drawing attention to people who live with transplanted organs or waiting for transplantation. Genetic conditions such as polycystic kidney disease and heart failure are the main causes of organ transplants. As Kenya joins the world in commemorating the World Transplant Day, Kenyans have been urged to develop a culture of organ donation in order to save lives. This as the government puts stringent measures to curb animal practices. Michael Mandiga from Kenyatta National Hospital, Nairobi.
Well, ahead of the World Population Day coming up in a couple of days, tonight we are privileged to host William Ryerson, the president of the Population Media Center. We're going to be talking about how do we reduce the population as humanly as possible ahead of that day. So that story bringing us to our first break. Remember, coming up shortly, Wairimo Jenga with the day's business, and of course later on, Karen Marakwet Kibet will be giving us the day's sports. Stay with us.
The Policyholders Compensation Fund notifies the general public that it is currently compensating policyholders and beneficiaries of Standard Assurance Company and Resolution Insurance Company. All claimants are required to download the claims form from PCF website www.pcf.go.ke or collect physical forms from PCF offices, KWFT Center, 6th floor, Masaba Road, Upper Hill. Fill the form in duplicate and attach copies of the required documents. Submit to PCF offices for verification and processing in line with the fund's compensation guidelines and procedures. The maximum compensation payable by the fund on any one claim lodged by a claimant is 250,000 Kenya shillings. Policyholders Compensation Fund, Dhamana ya bima yako.
Colgate Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa David Irene, nimetoka Mwiki. Loto Moto ni show iko sawa, ni kitu true. So na walikanyi wote mcheze Loto Moto.
Usisahau
kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Welcome back. It feels good to be back. My name is Wairimu Jenga with the latest in the world of business. Now, let's now delve into it. The Institute of Economic Affairs says high revenue collection focused could push up the 2023-2024 budget deficit, which could negatively impact provision of services and development projects. Tax experts from the Institute of Economic Affairs claim a huge chunk of the recurrent expenditures pending bills arises from poor internal auditing of public institutions and a high wage bill.
In terms of reducing the overall budget, when it comes to the numbers, the numbers as we have it, we don't see that reduction in the budget, but there's need to reduce to meet the promises of reducing the budget so as to live within our means. So the challenges that we've been having, for example, delays, disbursement of funds, they result from that huge deficits that we have been implementing for over 10 years. So we've reached at a moment in time when the loans that are maturing, especially the Euro bonds, the external loans, are really maturing very fast. And so those pose a lot of risks in terms of balancing between repayment or servicing of this debt against implementing the programs.
But overall, what the expectation from many practitioners is that you would wish that you go into a forum and you see the tentative proposals in the main document. I think that's lacking in terms of seeing the main issues that you are raising in the main document, like budget policy statement, and that's something perhaps we can really work on.
Well, this is a conversation that has elicited mixed reactions, and in our subsequent bulletins, we'll be delving into the Finance Bill 2023 as we tell you more about some of the tax changes that have been proposed in the bill. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, mwaka at least kwa siku cheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto, watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Colgate Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Huchagui familia yako, ni zawadi ya Mungu kwako kama ulivyozawadi kwao. Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB. Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KBC Business. Now, Kenya should harmonize its phytosanitary standards with other East African community members states to increase regional grain exports. The coordinator for Codex Committee for Africa, Hakim Mufumbiro, says grain trade in the EAC region has been low due to different aflatoxin standards, with countries such as Kenya opting to use the international standards.
Without those particular data, it becomes difficult to set standards that are reflective of the region. And the fallback position in that case would be international standards that may not be reflective of the current situation in the region.
The biggest challenge we have currently within the Eastern Africa region is that countries impose standards suddenly at the borders, and it makes it difficult for us to trade among ourselves.
We do not only talk about food in terms of export, but we seriously talk food in terms of our local consumption, because there has been a notion that only food destined for export should be the one that is safe. But we need to start getting concerned about the food we produce, both from our kitchen gardens, all through to our farms.
Thank you for the comments. And by the way, Menti is still on.
Now, imagine spending 1 shilling to cover a distance of 1 kilometer. It sounds impossible and unthinkable, but it's actually happening. Chinese electric motorbike maker Omnivoltaic Energy Solutions is betting on the high cost of fuel to capture the heart of bike enthusiasts and expand into the region. Trevor Ngendo is attending the ongoing UN Habitat Assembly in Gigiri and filed the following report.
With every dawn, the global future of mobility appears to be electric. According to research by American consulting firm McKinsey, in the next 3 decades, only 20% of all vehicle sales globally will be powered by combustion engines. The electric shift is being driven by China and the United States. Last week, President William Ruto announced the government's plan to introduce electric motorcycles in a move that is set to reduce the transport cost for Kenyans and reduce petroleum-reliant transport.
By September this year, we will have a mechanism where you can get your border that does not need petrol, that will be run on electricity, one that is financed by not a predatory system, but one that respects the interests of those who purchase the borders.
Chinese-based electric energy solutions firm Omnivoltaic says the benefits of electric motorcycles far more exceed those of diesel-powered bikes.
For every liter of normal gas, you can ride something like 35 to 40 kilometers, and that will cost you around 180, 190 shillings. For the same distance using electricity, it costs you roughly 30 shillings. So it's a big cost differential comparing traditional fuel with electricity.
The company says its 4-kilowatt battery offers a range of 100 kilometers, which is up to 600 shillings cheaper than normal bikes.
We want to make sure not only you can have a brand new electric bike, you can also possibly swap out the traditional engine and insert an electrical drivetrain into a traditional bike.
The company is looking for local partners who can assist in converting and installing electric drivetrains to engine motorcycles. Kenyan EB, an electric bicycle seller, is calling for more financing options to enable more individuals and businesses to afford the bicycles, which are currently retailing at least 100,000 shillings.
The reception has not been so much easy because it's a new concept in the market. To purchase the bike might be expensive. The advantages, part of it is on the maintenance cost. It might even come at zero per month.
The world of electric mobility has been abuzz with all sorts of innovations as manufacturers try to come up with solutions that could address the global challenge of carbon emissions. And if you are a frequent transporter of cargo within the capital city, then this here could be a viable option for you at a cost of 120,000 Kenyan shillings. Trevor Nindo for Prime Edition at the UN headquarters, Nairobi.
Thank you, Trevor, there for that interesting story. Now, the Council of Governors is pushing for amendment of the Equalization Fund law to facilitate timely disbursement. Council of Governors Finance Committee Chair Fernandez Baraza says governors are keen to have bureaucracies related to the processing of funds that have slowed down development in devolved units addressed.
We'll do introductions starting from the Senate side.
We therefore urge the Senate to amend the bill to ensure that the fund is used in accordance with the existing framework on the management of conditional grants. That is, the funds shall be utilized as conditional grants to the affected counties in accordance with the Division of Revenue Act and the Equalization Fund Appropriation Act, and in the place of counties, the Additional Allocations Act.
I'm happy that you have provided for an extension. There's been a lot of dilly-dallying at Treasury with these funds, to the extent that when Senator Boni Halwale and I were here, we were dealing with 14 counties. He's come back now, we are dealing with marginalized areas. The money for the previous set of the marginalization policy and the second one has not been disbursed, and that is against the Constitution and a violation of the people who, under Article 204, the Constitution thought that they ought to bring up to speed with the rest of the country.
Lucy Radoli, Legal Counsel.
Well, that marks the end of business news tonight, but do not go anywhere. Tom Mboya is up next with an interesting conversation. Tom.
Many thanks, Wairimu Njaga. It's really great to have you back. They say that even in a game of football, halftime is very good for the heart and mind. So she's come back smiling in the style of a mile per hour. Later on, we're going to have Karen Marakwet Kibet bringing us the day sports. But before that, remember, I'd told you that we are privileged to have in studio the president of PMC, the Population Media Center, William Ryerson. Of course, earlier we had expected to speak to the country director, Tom Kazungu, but we are extremely excited that the president himself decided to come and be with us, to come and talk to us about the World Population Day. Remember, it's celebrated every 11th of the year, and some of the goals is to raise the awareness among people about the impact of the growing population and also those issues around that. So I want to go straight into it, and I want to thank the president for finding time.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
We thank you. We're very delighted that you found time to be with us. Now, I want to, if you look at the national or the global landscape, you know, there are a lot of issues. The world seems to be interconnected. What happens in one part of the world, you know, has a ripple effect on the other. And today, just looking at the globe, you know, we realize that the population has gone up. We're talking of 8 billion plus. And my first question to you is, do you think that the world can sustain a global population that today stands at about 8 billion?
Not at the current quality of life, the average quality of life on the planet. No way. We are surviving because of non-renewable resources like coal, oil, gas, and various metals and minerals. And by definition, non-renewables are depleted as they're used. If you look at what can be sustained on 100% renewables, at the Western European lifestyle, it's 2 billion. So we are way above that. And our best bet in terms of sustainability and quality of life is to bring about a gradual decline to a sustainable level. And that can be done in a human rights context, and it's very important to take action on this as fast as possible for countries like Kenya. When I first came here for the launch of Tushauriani on this network and Ushikwepo Shikamana, the population was less than half of what it is now. And since the world turned to 8 billion in mid-November, it has added the equivalent of the Kenyan population in the 7 months since that time.
And so obviously, no doubt that, it sounds a bit, just listening to you, that we are outgrowing planet Earth. And so the follow-up question would be, how then, in such an environment, do we bring down the number of the population as humanly as possible? Because remember, even during the COVID, there were narratives and conspiracy theories that perhaps those were one of the approaches used to deal with the rapidly growing population. So from where you sit as president of PMC, what are those new approaches that can settle the populace as being good and humane methodologies that can be adapted by countries like Kenya?
As the First Lady said earlier on this program, putting women at the center of everything is what is required. Girls' education, stopping child marriage, allowing women to have agency over how many children they have and when they start bearing them, allowing women to be free of violence. Violence against women is the #1 public health concern, let alone human rights concern worldwide, with at least 1/3 of women experiencing violence. This cannot continue. We need to find ways in which women can play the leadership role they have the capability of doing. And particularly reproductive health is important to make that possible. So what Population Media Center is doing here in Kenya and in the 57 countries where we have done programs so far is programs for the older members of your audience, like Tushauriani, that are serialized dramas in which key characters, particularly female characters, evolve into role models for the audience to show changes that can be made to improve the quality of life, such as using family planning, such as allowing girls to be educated and instead of being sold into marriage, such as stopping FGM and stopping other forms of violence against women. And if that is done worldwide, we will have a leveling off and a decline to a sustainable level. If we don't do this, we will have a very hard landing.
A lot of the people you speak about, the ones in the older demographic, and you say that they would be the perfect demographic to be used as role models. In the Kenyan context, culture plays a very central role. And there is a way in which, if you study our construct as Africans, the higher the number of children, perhaps, the more wealth one is, considered to be. So as you talk about some of the challenges that you encounter as an organization, would those cultural barriers be one of those things that you need to reconcile yourself around?
This is not just an African issue. So all over the world, as people evolved, it was a good idea to have a large family because most children died on the way to adulthood. And that all changed around the time of World War II with public health campaigns and vaccination programs. So in fact now 90 to 95% of all infants survive to adulthood. So that dramatic change is what has caused the rapid expansion of the population. And with that change, it is no longer adaptive for people to have huge families. They still honor it for tradition, but in fact when you have a farm that is shrinking by, say, the size of the family every generation, if you're having 6 children, each generation is inheriting 1/6 of that farm, and the next generation it's 1/36. It's no longer adaptable, and many countries are running out of resources because of that. When you think also for urbanites, the infrastructure needs of the rapidly growing population, the world's adding the equivalent of a new Nairobi every month. Think of the infrastructure of this entire city, and imagine trying to do that every month on a worldwide basis. There's a $1 trillion a year infrastructure deficit in the developing world. That is why we sit in traffic jams in Nairobi and many other cities of the world, because they cannot keep up with the demands of the growing population, and that's not even counting rural to urban migration.
Other than the traffic jams, what are the true indicators of that a city is really, really, truly overpopulated?
Well, certainly water shortages are a key issue. The access to clean water and clean sanitation is a major problem in every major city in the world, particularly in the developing world. Access to food is also a growing issue. So certainly cities can be large cities and be adapted to it and be sustainable. We see cities like Tokyo and New York functioning just fine. But when you have that kind of rapid growth without the ability to finance the infrastructure that's needed, that's when you see that a city is running into trouble.
Okay, tell me one thing, because if it's, I took some time just to see what's happening on the global landscape, and if it's only the population in Europe that is expected to be smaller by 2050 than it was in 2017, because the ones in the continent of Africa, some of them have actually doubled, like you rightly alluded to earlier. So what do you think are some of the lessons that countries like Kenya can borrow to sort of, reverse the trends that we are seeing of rapid population growth?
One of the key issues is economic welfare. So when Europe went through its demographic transition to small family size, and since then many Asian countries like China, which will also be decreasing in population by 2050, they realized what's called the demographic dividend. That is, as families got smaller, with no change in family income, people had money left over at the end of the month. That went into savings. That built capital in the capital marketplace. That allowed businesses to borrow and expand. That led to a demand for workers. That drove up wages. That led to a middle class. That led to taxable incomes that the governments could use to build roads, schools, and other infrastructure that increased economic productivity. So all of the Asian tigers and Europe, a century before that, went through this demographic transition and realized economic benefits. That's where Africa can really succeed. If it goes through the demographic transition quickly, it too can lead to prosperity.
Okay. Tell me, in the course of your work, what have you established as some of the risks that are openly associated with rapid population growth?
Well, certainly, as I said, a lack of access to resources for the people and grinding poverty is one of the risks. Grinding poverty leads to desperation. So right now in West Africa, in the Sahel region, experts are looking at the link between the low status of women and girls and terrorism, because the desperation in countries like Niger, which is running out of water, and where the average person has over 7 children, average woman has over 7 children during her reproductive years, they are in desperate financial straits, and therefore terrorists and jihadists are taking over many of the countries of the Sahel region. So this is not just an issue of water and food and clean air. It's also an issue of international security.
It's also a security issue. Tell me, just from your looking into the horizon, what do you see as the possible projections of the population growth going forward?
The UN Population Division makes 3 projections. Recently, we've been pretty much on the high projection, but we're moving towards the median projection. If we can go to the low projection, where the population levels off and goes into decline in the middle of this century, we will be much better off. And I think that's where a push for elevating the status of women and girls and making information about the safety and effectiveness of family planning available to populations everywhere will be critically important to achieving that low projection.
That low projection. So as we wind up, we know that the World Population Day is fast approaching. I think it's celebrated on the 11th.
July 11th.
July 11th. Thank you for that. What would you hope to see being canvassed this time round? And perhaps what plans does your organization, because I know you have local presence. Yes. You're headquartered in the States, but you have local presence. So in terms of planning, what should we expect your organization to?
In terms of national leadership, I think some countries have done this very well, where national leaders use the occasion of World Population Day to speak to their people about the importance of not rushing into marriage and childbearing as a teenager, and the importance of limiting family size to the number of children that can be educated and supported. So I think there's an opportunity here for the national leadership to do that. Certainly Population Media Center will continue to do what it has been doing now for 25 years, since our founding exactly 25 years ago, and that is long-running serialized dramas on primetime radio and television in countries from Kenya to Hollywood, where key characters demonstrate for the audience benefits of new behaviors that are adaptive for public health and for economic welfare. And so here in Kenya, that is our hope as well, to continue doing such programs. We did Maisha Pakacha during the pandemic, and it achieved huge ratings. So it was very popular and very well done acting and writing. And those kinds of programs can bring in a much larger audience than information programs. I hate to say this, but information programs are generally not causing people to change behavior. They may learn things from information programs, but when they watch a character go from being a subservient woman, as we had in one of our drama programs, to being an entrepreneur, they can see what is possible for a woman to achieve in her lifetime, and using that as a role model, they can do that themselves.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, as we wrap up, I take it that you're heavily invested in the space of storytelling as one of the ways of wrapping yourselves around the issues of gender equality, poverty, maternal health issues, and also basic human rights issues.
Exactly.
I want to thank you, Mr. President, for
thank you very much for
time
having
to
me.
come
Really
and talk to us.
appreciate it.
William Ryerson, President, Population Media Center. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you soon again.
Thank you.
All right.
Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thank you very much. Well, that brings the interview to a close. We are taking a short break. Marakwet is on the other side to bring you the very latest in the world of sports. Stay with us.
Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Surrender unclaimed financial assets today and avoid the last-minute rush. Take advantage of penalties and fines waiver ending June 30th, 2023. Report and surrender unclaimed financial assets today. For more information, visit our website www.ufaa.go.ke/holders or contact us through holders@ufaa.go.ke or call us on 020-402-3000. Do not wait for the June 30th, 2023 deadline. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
If you value it, insure it. Manage your unforeseen medical expenses through medical insurance. Be sure to understand the terms and conditions in your insurance policy, such as waiting period, pre-existing conditions, your obligations, and the policy limits. Check the sub-limits in your cover to understand the maximum amount of cover per medical condition. Stay prepared for medical expenses by having medical insurance in place. Now you know. IRA, promoting insurance, protecting the insured.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally is set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the seventh leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vampera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Urumisha ndege, aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
'Urumisha ndege, aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit.
Okay.
the golden ticket. Mozart Bet Cup, 2 million shillings. CAF Confederations Cup. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet Cup.
Welcome back to KBC Prime Edition. Let's now talk sports. My name is Karen Kibet. The national women's cricket team head coach Francis Ndege has named 5 debutants in the squad that's set to feature in this year's edition of Kwibuka T20 cricket tournament scheduled for the 10th to the 18th of June in Kigali, Rwanda.
Head coach Francis Ndege has included spin bowler Judith Ojiambo, batter Marion Juma, bowlers Anna Wanjera and Linz Nabwire, as well as wicket keeper Charity Muthoni in the 14-member team. The 5 are in line to earn their first caps in Rwanda as Kenya plots to recapture the title they last won in 2021.
We do have a very young side, and we're only looking at getting them play more games so that they can be more experienced, and maybe in the few years' time we'll be going for the trophy. But
I'm quite happy we are having some debutants still in this tournament, and still the youngsters, they have to pick up from the seniors because there are some who have some more experience, so they have to pick up from others. So the seniors don't have to come for the juniors, so the juniors have to pick up from the seniors so that when the seniors are out, they can continue the game from where the seniors left it.
The squad has also been boosted by the return of former captain Quinta Abel, medium pacer Mary Wamboi, and Moi Girls Nairobi Form 3 student and all-rounder Melvin Kagoiza.
We do have Quinta coming back from disciplinary issues, and we also do have Mami and Melvin coming back from school engagement. Those are 2 players we missed when we were in Uganda. So we do hope that they'll beef up the squad, and which is something that is very much needed because they are 2 very good players.
Kenya has triumphed 4 times of the tournament staged in remembrance of the victims of 1994 genocide in the East African nation. Kenya will face Nigeria, hosts Rwanda, Uganda and Botswana in the round-robin matches, with 2 top teams facing off in the final.
It's very, very important. Kwibuka, we have to remember that we've won the title 3 or 4 times, and we've finished runners-up in the last edition. So we are still looking to go and see if we can get the title back again, and because we do believe it is always our title, so we want to go and see if we can get the title back.
The team is set to leave the country on Thursday. Meanwhile, Peponi Preparatory School's cricket team is ready to go ahead of the invitational tournament in Zimbabwe. According to the team's head coach Lydia Kaparo, the team is optimistic of registering impressive results at the tournament that's set to attract several schools from the continent.
And so we'll be playing against other schools in Zimbabwe, and we'll take a squad of 13 girls and a squad of 14 boys, and I think it's going to be a very good exposure for them to play, because Zimbabwe is a test playing country, and their cricket is recognized in the world. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good competition for them.
Thank you, Okumu, for that report. Moving on, Kenya stands a better chance of performing better at the Billie Jean King Cup tennis tournament this year due to the absence of European teams that have been a major stumbling block. The team has not been producing results whenever they were pulled against European nations, but are now confident of achieving their main objective while playing against neighboring teams within the continent.
Kenya will host the Billie Jean King Cup on the June 12th at Nairobi Club, which will bring together 11 other African countries in an attempt to qualify to Group 2. The representing nations will be split into 2 pools after Sunday's draw in a bid to give a chance to African teams playing in the later rounds.
Through the experience of the years, we have our players who have been out there looking for ranking goals, and then just the general commitment. So with the level of play, it's very easy to come up with a lineup that will represent Kenya in this event that we have.
The teams competing in Nairobi will include Tunisia, Morocco, Botswana, Ghana, Nigeria, Burundi, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mauritius, Uganda and Seychelles.
In general, if the Almighty God can just add a little bit of some sun to get it a little bit dry and hot. This should be okay. And then the main one is the crowd. You can see the stadium is big. So if we can be able to fill the stadium, just a clap from everyone, the atmosphere will be very good for the players.
Kenya will field their strongest squad, which includes Wimbledon doubles junior champion Angela Okutui, Roslinda Asumwa, Cynthia Cheruto, and Alicia Owigi.
Well, as a team, we want to qualify, but in mind, we're trying to take each match one at a time, each opponent and each team, because we don't want to put ourselves into too much pressure thinking of the end goal. We're just trying to think of the present and focusing more on each day and each match one at a time.
We have been training for 3 weeks, improving our weakness to do what we'll do in court. The competition is going to be really good, and I'm excited to just be able to play here in Kenya and to show Kenyan people and fans what tennis is all about and hopefully inspire some people.
The tournament will be played in a round-robin format where the winner of Group 3 tournament in both pools will be promoted to the second-ranked division, while the bottom-place team will be relegated back to Group 4.
Thank you, Njogu, for that report. Moving on, 20 teams will participate in the 6th edition of the Embu Rugby Sevens tournament to be held this weekend at the Embu Showground.
This year's Embu Sevens, that is normally used as preparations break to the National Sevens Circuit, will include women and junior categories, where primary and secondary schools will curtain raise on Friday before the senior category on Saturday and Sunday. The objective of including the junior category is to provide an opportunity to the upcoming talents, with All Saints High School from Embu among schools representing Kenyan rugby at the East Africa School Games to be held in Rwanda later in August.
Having ladies teams on 9th, high school category and age grade rugby to be played on 9th, and it is free entry. Then we'll be having the senior category on 10th.
Huu tumejitayarisha kabisa, tuna expect a very huge turnout. Tuko na teams mingi ambayo zimeconfirm zitakuja.
Defending champions Strathmore Leos are amongst teams that have confirmed participating in the 2-day tournament. Join Abwile, Prime Edition.
Thank you, Joy, for that report. Now, finally, World and Commonwealth medalists Mary Morab, Beatrice Chebet, and Daniel Simiyu are among athletes that will take part in a 2-day Kenya Police Service Athletics Championship from tomorrow at the Moi International Sports Center in Kasarani. Morab, the national 400 meters record holder, will be seeking a double in the 800 meters and 400 meters. She clocked 2 minutes 4.63 seconds to win her maiden police title last year, beating Gloria Chepchumba and Eunice Sum. All the best to all the athletes who will be looking to qualify for the World Athletics Championships. Those are all the sports stories we had for you tonight. I'll definitely see you tomorrow, same time, same place, with more sports news. My name is Karen Kibet. Have yourself a peaceful night. But the broadcast is not yet over, as after this short break, my colleague Tom Mboya will be back with more.
The cup with the golden ticket. Mozart Bet Cup, 2 million shillings. CAF Confederations Cup. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet Cup.
Thank you, Marakwet, for that sporty update. Actually, it's now my time to wrap it up, because coming up is the scorecard, and the topic of discussion tonight is Kenya's public well-being. So on behalf of the Prime Edition team, I want to thank you all of you, including our sign language interpreter, Brian Mararu, and you, the viewer, for making time to be with us and keeping us company. So my name is Mboya. Good night from Nairobi, Kenya.